So we could check before the 6th comes, right? You just can't call it to order.
What if we don't want to talk?
We can
Check what? What do we check? Oh, chat.
chat. I mean, yeah, you guys could bring us up to speed on, you know, the latest narrative that you distributed, and, you know, we'll call it to order when we get our sixth person.
That'd be helpful.
Did you print?
You guys already got the other copies.
No, I don't have a, oh yeah, I have mine right in front of me, never mind.
Everybody
I
got
mean, I
one?
didn't bring it, it's here.
That's the new copy.
Yeah, but this, I already
I
had this
also have
before,
a
I came
copy
via
of the
email, didn't
agenda
I?
if you didn't.
I just
No.
didn't
It's
know.
changed.
Oh.
I added revenue,
Agendas,
so
anyone?
it screwed up Bob's numbers.
You do?
Oh, okay.
So,
Look at it. You I can email if I need to. I got 2 more agendas. Who wants? Anybody? Anybody? Okay. So, as soon as the 6th person gets here, we'll call it to order. Until then, you know, if you guys want to bring the
You'll
5
have
of
to-
us up to speed.
You'll have to start this so Rich can start it though, if you're gonna do it.
Oh, no, when you call it to order,
So you're not gonna film the conversation?
I will.
So do you want him to show up again? Oh, there's the 6th.
Aha, there's our 6th.
Good, solve that problem.
Yay, Patty.
So you just discussed the problem.
Because
and then
sometimes,
it's solved.
Sometimes, yes,
We're
sometimes
asked to-
so much.
start a meeting
Yes.
in some way, even when we can't call it. So that
Take
you
a
know
chair,
what-
any chair.
Patty's like, I do not
Hi,
want
Patty.
to be filmed all the time. Sitting left.
Actually, Drew's got a lot to say, so you're gonna be on film a lot over there.
Excuse me?
Drew's gonna talk a lot, you're gonna be on the camera a lot.
I made that mistake at 146 meeting.
Wow. That's kind of hurtful. You know, if I had a feeling, it would be hurt.
Take the pressure off.
All right, so,
Actually serious.
we've actually got a quorum, let's call this thing to order at 7:08. Do we have any additions or corrections to our agenda, folks?
I didn't get one.
It's right here.
I emailed it, but I have the
Oh,
extra,
you
I brought
emailed
copies,
it
yeah.
late, didn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sort of late.
Okay.
I have mine, yeah. Okay, so no additions and corrections. Members of the public, we have 1, 2, okay. Do you have something you'd like to bring to our attention now, or are you just gonna hang out and listen?
Just hang out and listen.
Okay,
Listening.
all right. Which brings us to the second look at the budget. Which one of you wants to talk first?
go ahead, you got the narrative.
Great. Okay, so there was a small group of folks that met with me prior to Thanksgiving break to review the draft. At that point, we went line by line through this sort of expanded budget narrative, which has been modified several times since then. I'm not sure what your interests are. We could go section by section to go through the whole thing. We can look at some supporting documents first. I'm not sure what folks would like to do. Just to give you an overview, so each heading here aligns with one of the headings sections once you get to the expenditures part of the budget. And the numbers and brackets at the beginning of each line identify which line number it's referring to. What I tried to do is identify the staffing for that area, so people would know how many people we're talking about, or how many positions, and whether or not there was any change to that. And then also anything that appeared to be up or down to try to, things that could come up as questions to explain it, where it's coming from and why it's changed. So what's your pleasure on that? Do you guys want to go through section by section?
Is
Yeah.
that the most helpful for everybody?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So we're gonna start on, if you look at these simultaneously, page 1 of the budget, 2/3 of the way down under expenditures. Lori can explain the revenue stuff on top at the end, I think, probably, right? So the first category is general direct instruction. And as you can see, that basically includes 2.5 FTEs. There's no change in that amount. A lot of the changes in this section are attempts to clean up, I won't say necessarily mistakes. Some of them are mistakes. Some of them are just to clean up the organizational structure of the budget. For example, the first one, line 45, 504 services. So these are services that we provide to students around 504 plans. They used to be tied in with a purchase professional services line, and what I've tried to do is separate that out so it's more clear to people what purchase professional services are and for whom they're purchased. So that's one way we did that, is we created this 504 line, which doesn't exist previously, and therefore it shows as if it's blank going across in the previous fiscal years. Another area we tried to clean up, equipment maintenance was a line that they used to house the copier leases, and which didn't really make a lot of sense to me, since the maintenance budget should be for maintaining things, not leases. So it was in 3 different places in the budget for the copiers. And so what I did is we moved those all into one area and tried to tie that together. So postage communication is going to include rental and usage of a postage machine, phone, and I don't know my other page, but a couple other areas there as well. And contracted services, 52, which is an attempt to just try to have a more of a cleaner look at what this is. I'm sorry, this is the copier line. The VTVLC, which is the online program, our dual enrollment costs, and any legal expenses for the principal's office. You guys have a separate legal expense line at the board section as well. So there's an attempt to try to like organize things based on the function, which is more appropriate. We've mentioned this as an example a couple of times of an actual mistake. Line 54, there was, you can see the actual cost in FY16 for internet expense was 28,000, but we have only budgeted 14. That is a mistake having to do with revenue, that there was an assumption that there was E-rate revenue coming in, that you just didn't have to list the whole thing in the expense account, we would gain the revenue, but really it's sort of a double dipping. We have to actually show the full expense and the matching revenue to get it to come out in the wash. So we've had to increase that by 11.8 to get it to the actual amount. So it's not really an increase in the cost of internet service, it's just a full showing of the actual expense. And line 55, the bottom one, is I was just clarifying what the purpose of that is. We use that for Google licensing for the Chromebooks for one-to-one computing. So that area, when you look at the next top of page 2, it shows you the total of where we are on that. And some of that increase for that area has to do with stuff coming out of other areas, which we'll get back to later. But mostly around the communication line, consolidated from other places. So that's why that one is appearing to be up, but there will be other downs in other places to show that. And I'm just going to keep rolling if you guys have questions as we go.
Where is that noise?
That office.
Those children.
Okay.
Ow.
Pay no attention to the noise behind the curtain. So I'm just going to keep rolling, and then if there's questions, please don't hesitate to stick your hand up and stop me. But in the interest of efficiency, we'll just keep going. So art is the next area, and it appears as though there's a reduction in art salary, but as I've explained on here, there's really no change in the art department, just a reallocation of a .67 salary to woodworking and tech ed, which is line 133. And so it's really just a shift from one place to another, having to do with a new staffing in that area and the licensure that goes along with that. Career ed, it's basically pretty flat. It's a 1 FTE, no change. English is one area where we currently have 5 FTEs, but this budget reflects 4 FTEs, and that's a function of not replacing a person who's departing who is half literacy coach, part English and part French teacher, not just part French. And we'll explain a little bit more about the coaching aspect later on in another part of the budget, and we'll talk about the French, I think, later on as well. But that position is just not going to be replaced in the English department. Foreign language, that's a 2.0 FTE, that stays. There's no change there. I did make a note that there is a possible sabbatical leave request coming to us from a science teacher who also is with the departure of this other person in English, will be our only licensed French teacher. So that's going to be something we're going to have to address at some point. And talk about what the implications of that are if this person does end up with a sabbatical. PE and health, I talked about this a little bit. So in the initial budget, we have a small increase there, and it has to do with licensing area change. We had somebody teaching PE with a provisional license, and that person is not pursuing that being a permanent addition to their endorsement area, which means that there's a section of PE that I'm gonna have to cover from another place. We'll have a teacher who is not full-time, who can teach health, and if I move some health phys ed stuff around, I can reallocate it. So there's a need to basically increase PE by that amount to get coverage of the current PE offerings. I know that sounds a little bit like a shell game, and kind of is, but it involves 3 different staff members, all with different licensure areas, and an expiring provisional license. So I think we'll see more about this. That one of the people involved in this will come up again later. And then there's an equipment increase, line 113, and now we're on to page 3 of the budget. And this is one of those areas where it's not a mistake from the past per se, it's not an accounting error, it's just an underfunding of a line that really requires much more significant funding in order to purchase equipment. Phys ed and health, the fitness room down in D level has several pieces of large equipment, rowing machines, treadmills, things like that. The 2 treadmills that they've had for years, both had to been discarded, just damaged beyond repair, and the treadmills, I'm sorry, the treadmills have been discarded, and the rowing machines are being repaired now. So we're hoping to be able to add some new equipment to that, and the $1,000 budget that's been in place for years is not nearly sufficient to purchase even one piece of equipment, never mind multiple. So hoping to have that increase to try to buy at least 1, if not 2 pieces of equipment for the fitness room. And that's because of the new phys ed standards. It's a place that gets used quite a bit. Consumer science is no change in the FTE there. I think the difference in that variance of 12,000 had to do with it being reallocated from a different section. But it's basically that position is not changing, just that money has been reallocated from a different location. And that is the person who actually is gonna get the 0.16 increase to help fund the PE area. Woodworking and tech ed. So this is, I mentioned that the art department had a reduction, it was really just a shift. This is where that shift is picked up. And now, so this used to be a 0.33 FTE, and now that 0.67 is joining the 0.33, making it a 1.0. And the art reduced on that side as well. The equipment line, 140 on this one, is up quite a bit, and again, this has to do with this new staff member who's in the design tech ed department, who has some great ideas about some direction that he would like to take that program. Some really innovative things, and he's our former IT person here, and would like to have some equipment purchases to help fund that work. All right, page 2 of my summary starts with math, and math is pretty much the same FTE that was in the approved budget. Just to point out, though, that is a reduction in service of what we're currently doing, because there was a 0.67 math position added at the end of the school year last year after the budget was approved. So it's a straight staffing from budget to budget, but it's actually a decrease in service from what we have right now. So I want to make sure that being clear about that, everyone understands that. Okay. There's additional increase there in one line 145 around insurance, and we're going to see this again with the science department shortly, but we have 2 people who are requesting sabbaticals. And so what we've done, part of the contract around sabbaticals is that the teacher, when they return, can get reimbursed, or has to get reimbursed for their out-of-pocket healthcare costs that they've paid through our program for the year that they've been off. So what we are thinking to do is to front load half of that cost into this fiscal year, and then half into the following fiscal year, so that when they return, we'd be able to reimburse them that full amount at the beginning of that new fiscal year. So that's the logic of that. And again, if they don't get the sabbatical, or if they choose not to take it eventually, then this money clearly could come out of the budget. But have it in there now because it's on the table for you guys to make a decision about next Tuesday. Yes?
If they don't come back, we still
If they don't come back, we're not obligated to pay them that.
They have to teach for a full year.
Oh, okay.
And you've double checked all those numbers that they're all half numbers, they're not all three of them?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Well, it's down to two,
Two, right,
because
okay,
one of them
good.
rescinded his request.
Okay.
Yep, so we're down to two. Math and science. All right, moving into music. So music is a little bit complicated around the salary line because, first of all, we had a departure of one teacher and we brought in a new teacher. The new teacher, because he also works a portion of a day at Wardsboro, is technically a Wyndham Central employee, and therefore he comes out of our salary line and goes into a WCSU assessment line, 162. So it looks like we have a reduction in salary because it shows a $34,000 reduction. The reality, unfortunately, is that it's the opposite direction. It's just located a different line, and additionally, it's a more expensive staffing than the previous staffing, and therefore it's additional cost and salary and benefit line. So that's why we see
More
that.
experience and higher salary,
Correct.
higher
Yep.
level on that.
You
Just
got
wanna
it.
make sure everybody else understood that.
Yep, but the money just flows through a different line
Yeah.
rather than flowing through the salary and health line.
So that's a 0.67?
0.83.
23 is.
Yep. So we have a total of 1.83. We buy 0.83 from Wyndham Central, we hire our own 1.0. How it works from an accounting standpoint. All right, moving on to page 4 is science. Again, this one has, where are we? This one has 5 FTEs of science teachers. There is a half an FTE in there, which technically is someone who teaches foreign language, but they're entirely in the science department at this point. We didn't change that function. The insurance increase on line 173 does reflect the second sabbatical request I just mentioned a moment ago.
So,
Yes.
if I can,
Yep.
the 5 that you've budgeted in here is not only for science though, or is for just science?
It's
I mean, I
for,
understand the way it
it's
has
basic,
been, but-
really is 4.5 science and a half world language, technically.
But we're keeping,
And the half world language is up
I
to
understand,
take on the world language from the other departing French teacher.
my question is really just around how much full-time staff do we have teaching science, and it's 4.5.
4.5.
It would be next year under this. Right now, it's probably 4.67,
Yeah.
4.83.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, thanks.
It's slightly less than 5 currently. Social studies, 4.0, no changes really there. There's a new textbook increase based on some needs for an AP, US history texts. And there's an addition to some, for laptop replacement for staff, which wasn't in this year's budget for some reason. So, trying to continue that circulation of replacement cycles. All right, driver education, again, appears to be an increase in salary, but that really is the difference between the 0.5 that was in the approved budget and the additional 0.25 that you guys added after the budget was adopted. So that's really what that difference is. So it technically, in this budget, is an improvement, is an increase of 0.25, but it really is already in place this year. The additional $3,000 at the bottom in line 205 is at this point, it's a placeholder. There needs to be some research into a new vehicle at some point, and so I tried to put in something that I thought would cover a manageable lease amount if we had to go that route. It's clearly not enough to buy a car, but we already own the car that we have, there's equity in that, so it might be enough to do something with, not really sure, but minimally it should cover a lease. And just so you guys are also aware, I'm also exploring with some local dealerships the idea of a donated driver's ed vehicle. Keep you in the loop on that one.
Can I ask a
Yes.
question about driver ed? We've had our fluctuations on need, and I know that 0.50 to the extra 0.25 last year. We know what our numbers look like, and we're gonna need that.
To be honest,
Quarter.
that's one of the areas I haven't had really a chance to look at.
Okay.
So to
We've had a lot
determine
of
how that programmatically, whether or not that's sufficient, whether it's too much, I don't
So
have
your
any.
expectation is that we won't need more, it's potentially, you might be able to reduce that if we don't have enough kids signed up, but it won't be higher than.
It's not gonna be higher than that.
Okay,
No. I could tell you just based on the number of students here that,
Okay.
I mean, Springfield had a full-time driver's ed teacher with twice the
Number more
population,
students,
so.
yeah.
That doesn't mean we can get away with half of one, but I mean, but I'm just trying, we're not gonna need a
Sometimes that
full-time
has
one.
to do with other options that kids can,
Right, and how they
Technology.
access, and how we access driver's ed for students and,
Right.
you know, whether they come out of classes to take, whatever. There's a lot of different variables in how you can operate a driver's ed program, and that's
That's
not one of
right.
the programs I've tackled yet.
very
Okay.
good, thank you,
But Karen has some good ideas that we're gonna discuss, so.
very good.
All right, the special education line, I'm gonna let Lori jump in here and just explain again why this is such a different looking animal, and then how this is gonna play out for us at the bottom line at the bottom.
Right, so as we've discussed before, all the revenues now are coming into the central office. So this, $646,000 is a net cost after we've applied the revenues at the central office. And that's what's billing through. That's what's, throwing everybody, because your total, last year was, what, $1.4 million, something like that, right?
144, yeah.
Yeah, $1.6 million actually last year. And so this year, your actual special ed costs are about $1.4 million. But this is after the revenues have been applied at Wyndham Central. So there is a reduction in special ed, and that is due to less outside placements
So far.
so far. You are absolutely right.
You've been here before,
As of today.
as of right now. All right, any questions on how that works? All right, the co-curricular, a couple things there. There's the salary line there includes, it's really one FTE of an athletic director, activities director, but also includes all the salaries for all the stipended coaching positions, class advisors, all those kinds of things are all included in that as well. The only thing on there I highlighted was supply increases. One of the things I discovered this year was that what was requested and deemed necessary funding for building this current year's budget was not actually budgeted, or perhaps it was reduced, I'm not sure. But, so I had to go through and figure out who was getting what from that money and how much they could actually spend during this fiscal year. So I think that's on the line that's probably underfunded. In addition to that, we also need some soccer goals, which are kind of a big ticket item. So that's been added in. You can see we've added $4,500 in to cover 2 new goals, line 229. And then line 231 is also an increase, and that is the 21C contribution that we need to make. That you guys are pretty sure are committed to making. So.
Can I just ask a question about that?
Yep.
This has been sort of a interest of mine in finding a way to expand learning opportunities for kids. And I recognize that, when we completed our 5-year 21st century grant, we needed to find another way, and we made a commitment to that. Is that still, I guess what I'm asking from you is, do you see the value? Are you still committed to that
Absolutely.
program? Because, I've even attended a 3-day conference on this and really see a lot of value, and I'm hoping that we're getting that same value that I've seen in the
Yep.
research that I've
In
looked
fact,
at.
we just had some good press, Montdigger, this story,
Yeah, so-
Thayer wrote, and it's, very compelling arguments for having this. Yeah, no, I'm a full supporter of this program.
Okay,
And
good. That's great.
just wanna make sure folks are on board with what our fair share is on this, and it's
Yeah.
gonna be a little more than what it's been. So that's the key part for this. But yeah, definitely worthwhile, in my opinion.
Good, thanks.
Yep.
Before you move on to the next section, I
Yep.
just want to point out too that on line 227, from your first draft budget, the transportation, we've increased that back up to what last year's budget
Okay.
was. The activity, winter sports activities tends to run in the red in transportation. So, as a board, you've approved to move money from the transportation line to cover those costs. And so that's why we increased that from the original budget that you received.
It's a couple thousand a year, and typically that's been, the rest of it's totally self-sustaining.
Right.
There's no other local money that goes into that program. So, yep. All right, counseling, where are we here? This one involves 3 people for a total of 1.85 FTEs, but that does not reflect a change. I just was spelling out those positions on my narrative so you could see. Line 244 is an increase, what appears to be a pretty significant increase there, but if you look back at the actual expense from FY16, and if we were able to see what our current expenses are for FY17, you'd see that it's going to run the same amount, and we bring in someone to do clinical supervision of our counselors to help provide them to have someone to talk through the counseling experience with a professional clinician, so that they can benefit from that experience and bring more advantageous support to kids. And that's something that we've been doing for a number of years, but we've never budgeted for it. So it's one of those things, it's like, well, let's budget for it if it's that important to us. So that's why that is in the budget there. And then the communications line, you can see, just appears to have disappeared, and that's because we moved that up to the general. I mentioned there's gonna be some things we would show moving later, and the counseling is one of those. Just so we can consolidate all postage and things like that in one place. All right, the nurse area, it's no change there. There's just a slight increase, again, due to more experienced staff member that was hired when we lost our nurse last year. All right, so this next area is sort of one of the big ones as far as additions. We talked a little bit about, I think, in the past about our Title I revenue stream and how that money has been used in lots of different places in the budget for the last couple of years. And a lot of those places have been to plug holes in different things, to supplement salaries, to keep people full-time, to provide services. But it was very much a scattered approach, and the Agency of Education has informed us that is no longer going to be tenable for them to be able to fund us in a way that has to be really more of a focused, deliberate approach on how that funding can be used. So we've been talking a lot with Jen and Lori and Bill and I about how to best use those funds. And I came from a school who utilized instructional coaches as a way to improve instruction and drive curriculum changes and those sorts of things. And I firmly believe that that's a huge lever for us to really move the school forward. So I'm proposing that we use that money to invest in people to do that. Now, how we structure those positions is still kind of up in the air. But I would just say that this is money that it counts on the revenue side. We're already including it in the revenue stream. We can't use it to replace or supplant, is the word they use, existing positions. We can't say, well, we have a math teacher who we don't want to pay for, we'll just use title money to pay for that math teacher. We can't do that. It's not allowed under the AOE rules. So really, and if I'm saying this incorrectly, jump in. We really have to use this money for a new endeavor. Not necessarily new people, but a new endeavor, or a collection of new endeavors, but in a focused way. So we're handcuffed. We're limited in how we can use it, but we're banking on, and we'll look at the revenue side later, about $168,000 we're hoping to get from that, and that would basically cover these 2 instructional coaches and their benefit packages. So I know it's going to flurry of questions, I'm sure, but I just want to make sure you understood that idea that we're limited in some way in how that money can be spent, and that this focused approach is something that the AOE is very, very supportive of.
So this is what you've talked about before in previous meeting, right? They're kind of what we used to have as curriculum coordinators.
Could be, yeah, similar in that regard. Yep.
You did bring this up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've talked about this before.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
You mentioned handcuffed or limited, but you feel that's really beneficial, that focused approach is what we need for our students. And can you speak a bit to where Leland and Gray stands on how many schools are actually using this approach? And
I mean, I don't know any that are not.
that's what
I mean, many are, and some of them even use local money. I mean, in Springfield, we use local money to do it because we started using the model before the AOE was approving title money being used in that way. So once they were doing it, they wouldn't let us supplant it because we were already spending local money. But districts are typically using that kind of money for those coaches. I just was at a meeting a while back where I met with the new Mill River principal, and they're using that money as well for a proficiency-based learning coach. So there's all sorts of different ways you can tie it. It can be direct services to kids, or it can be staff coaching. So, but it has to be focused, it has to be deliberate, it has to be tied to outcomes.
Yep.
If this gets approved, do you have a plan in mind that you're gonna move forward with?
I have a vague plan. I mean, my initial thought was to do 2 coaches, one sort of in the math science side and one more in the ELA humanities side. I've been rethinking that a little bit and thinking more on the lines of maybe something in the proficiency based. Once I heard about this model that they had going up there to kind of drive that kind of work. And another thing, which is sort of a sidebar to all this, is the middle school right now is going through sort of a renaissance. And we're gonna go from 2 teams, 1 7th and 1 8th, to 1 team at the middle school level, which will really be a tighter group. Right now, the teachers also teach some high school, so they're not true middle school teachers, and they don't have common planning, which is the essence of making good instruction happen at the middle school level around interdisciplinary work and project-based stuff. So by merging these into 1 team, we're gonna be able to do that, as well as help some of the scheduling issues on the high school side. So thinking about how I could have one of these 2 positions maybe support the middle school as we go into that model is something that I've also been thinking about. So whether we do 1 middle, 1 high, 1 proficiency-based, 1 instructional coaching, something like that. There's a few different ideas kind of floating around right now, but I will definitely have that firmed up in the next month or so. And again, we can use existing staff if they're qualified to do that once we set the job descriptions and the qualifications, or we can bring in someone from the outside.
So this 160,000 was already being utilized to fund positions in the budget. So we're gonna find a new focus for this 160,000, but we're gonna have to fill that 160,000 elsewhere.
Yes and no. First of all, this year was only 141,
140.
not 168. And 2, not all of that was going to salary. About half was going to
Right,
the
there was
literacy
some
coach
Professional
position.
development money used out of there as well.
Yeah, so some PD money. So that was the problem, is that it was going in too many different places. So that's what they've said is not gonna, and since the literacy coach was gonna depart anyway, it seemed like a good time to kind of reload and restructure.
But it is true, it's not an equal swap.
How much of that 141 are we gonna have to fund through other means now?
I'm gonna say it's right around 80.
Well, it's really all of it, right? Because you're,
Well, true.
salary-wise,
It's a wash.
yeah. You really need to use that 140,000 in local money now. That's what you're doing. Because you're using now this 160 to go towards a new positions.
Right. But for example, like the half of the FTE that was used to the literacy coach isn't gonna be funded anymore. So that's a savings. So, it's, but you're right in the sense that if there were teachers who were, I don't know, 7/8
Yeah.
local budget and 1/8 grant, that the local budget has to pick up the difference. It doesn't show in here on the salary lines where the revenue source goes to.
Right.
That would be insane. I mean, Lori had a lot of work on her hands just to do this, but that would be crazy. But yes, those things are now being topped off with local money to support those full-time positions. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other professional development? Oh, well, that's just the first part of it. And my narrative says 140, but really that's been modified to 168. 274. No, I'm sorry, 268 was the first line. I should have started at the top. This is a dollar amount. You can see there was an actual cost there, but there was nothing in the budget for this year. This is professional development admin directed salary. And this is money that was used to fund teacher summer work that had originally been taken out of the salary budget lines when the salary budget lines were built on the contracted salary amounts. So that led to overages in those areas. This money is money that's already been spent and been used. It's just, we're just putting it in a new box that's more tied to what it actually represents, if that makes sense. And then the other one, 274, professional development admin directed. This is sort of the principal's discretion around how to direct school-wide professional development for teachers. And this really is vital to what we want to do. The teachers have access to, or have had access to in the past, a fund that is the teacher-directed fund that they can use to take courses of anything that they want that ties to their licensure area. That fund this year was basically gone by the end of September. So teachers were really in a jam and have been in a jam without having really funding to do the PD work that they need, never mind the stuff that I want them to do, which hasn't been there at all. We've been using some of the title money from that PD that Lori mentioned to help do some of that this year, if it fit with a strategy that the titles are supposed to support. That isn't always the case. So those monies we haven't been able to spend as freely. But this would give us local dollars that would not be tied to the title limits that we could use to do PD for staff. Does that make sense? Yeah. She's not convinced of me. You follow me? Yeah?
Okay, so we're adding another 12,000 on top of the 140,000.
140 is not all in the legal and gray budget. Of our share of that is line 275.
No, he's talking about
Yeah,
I'm adding all the numbers together as we go.
it does it at the
Give you a
end
running
if you
total.
wait.
the
Oh, of the
140
new,
title one.
of the new ads you're talking
The
about.
ones that were the
He's talking about the
.17 and the
overage.
.19 and the .18.
Yeah,
I'm keeping track of all
If
the
you go to the
these.
next page, you'll see.
No, it's good.
yeah. Yeah, we have a sheet that'll explain all that for you. All right, so 275, the last line is that share of the 46,000. That's contractually driven. That's what that is. That's our contribution to that. And then, an equipment line to support the 2 coaches with laptops and so on and so forth. So that's really that section, which I know, again, is a big thing. It looks like a 487% increase because it's a 487% increase. There's no really way to get around the dollar amount there, but I think hopefully what you guys will see is that the plan here is really about focus the improvement of the school and moving the teachers ahead, moving the curriculum ahead, and bringing us into proficiency-based graduation, which I still need to present to you guys next Tuesday about, so you have a better sense of what that is. But this is all guiding the school in that purpose. All right, instructional technology. This is our IT department. That's basically a flow through from WCSU. They're all WCSU employees. We get billed on that. There appears to be a jump in the assessment for that, and it had to do with, we basically had to replace our entire IT department this summer, and new people, new benefit packages, so on and so forth. That's the difference. So that's really what that's about. We also added an equipment repair line, which is new, to help fund our one-to-one Chromebook rollout to support repairs that kids have that are not their fault, that they're not responsible for, the ones that we'll have to repair. Typical wear and tear stuff. So that's IT. Library, no change there. In the FTE, still 1.0. There is a shift out of copier contracts from the equipment repair line up to general contracted services, which I mentioned earlier. And there's an increase in text funds in the library books category. Again, and I've talked about this before as well, but there are certain lines that were just underfunded, and the need to have more money going into the library to make sure we have a properly funded library for our kids. All right, support services is the next section, which is a lot of the school board stuff. One big shift you're going to see here, and it shows as a $56,000 increase, is going to be the business office assessment. And you're going to see later on in the budget where our business office goes away virtually, but this is where it goes. There is a savings to us, a net savings on that one, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So you'll see that as we come up later. So remember that number 56,000 now, and we'll come back to that later. Principal's office, currently a 3.75 FTE, including support, admin support. This budget, as written currently, does have an increase of the 3.75 of another 1.0, and this is for the restructuring of the administrative team to include an assistant principal. The proposal would be that the assistant principal would come on next year, and then when Mel, our director of student services, retires the following year, we would not replace that position. And so we would have what would appear to be a little bit of a, well, not a little bit of a significant increase. I'll look you in the eye when I say that, Drew. To add that, but then it would be a savings the following year when that position goes away with her retirement. And then, again, the communications line, 323, is going up to general communications to consolidate. And then 328 is just a slight increase to show the actual cost of dues that we pay to the VPA and other professional organizations that support us and our kids. All right, the business office, you can see, referred to earlier, was that $56,000 number that we're assessed for that. You can see that we're actually reducing by 71,000, so there's a net gain for us in that. And that's part of the efficiency, I guess, of central office. Magic. The magic that is the central office.
That's right.
All right. And then the last section that is really developed, the rest of them are kind of flow through numbers for transportation and such, is the buildings, operations and maintenance section. We have a 5 OFT there. We have a slight increase in salaries there to shift some money from a snow removal line up to a salary line, because we pay one of our employees additional money to do that, and you can't pay one of your employees separate money as a contractor if he works for you, so we have to put that in the salary line and have payroll taken out through that. The building improvements line, 360, this is the line that we do what I would refer to as annual projects. These are smaller projects to update the school. Sometimes these are kitchen equipment repairs. Just recently we did a lighting retrofit outside on the drive coming down to the gym. So this winter when you come, you'll hopefully have much better lighting out there, or any lighting out there. Things like that are smaller projects that are done within the building that are not part of the capital or stewardship plan. These are more smaller projects. And obviously, we've talked about the building before. There's a lot of those projects to be done, both at the capital level as well as the smaller annual project level. So that's why that's up a little bit as well. And you can see that that's been underspent. It was budgeted but underspent in previous years. Insurance, 361, just trying to budget for what the actual cost is. Security supplies, 365, this is another increase to basically complete phase 2 of exterior cameras being installed in the building. This past summer, in the current year budget, they installed a pretty hefty upgrade to the internal system, as well as a new server and all the different parts that go along with that, as well as some actual cameras. So this is really phase 2, which is the external stuff in the backside of to get the fields, parking lot, and the drive coming down by the Dutton. So there's an increase there. And then the last one, 367, is to show an actual cost of electricity. And then the remainder parts are the transportation, food service, and debt service. All bring us to what appears to be a negative 8.3 or an 8.3% decrease in the budget, which we know is not real because of the way that the special education stuff is being accounted for. So we added below the double line the money to show that, and then bring you in to show you where we actually are, which is 3.4% above a total $240,691 up from this year's operating budget.
Can you double check that, because I don't actually think that's right. I think it's 3.3.
3.3.
Maybe the rounding.
I checked the rounding, it's 3.25, no
Oh.
matter how you do it.
The 24691 represents that in the 73609. Okay.
Got the calculation, but I can do
And
that.
I don't know where it's coming from, there could be something weird somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
It's
just.
not big, but we're gonna be like, every basis
Sure.
point will represent it to the public.
No, that's fine, I'm just looking at the, yeah, I got the calculation there, but we'll try again.
All right, so the other page that Lori provided here is the explanation of the budget increase. And this was something that the subcommittee that I met with prior to Thanksgiving asked specifically for, a sort of a detailed listing of where that money is, sort of what Drew's been doing in his head over here. So this sort of shows you some of the areas, and trying to show like which areas were under budgeted, which things are actual increases, and which things are decreases. And it's revenue neutral in the sense that the title money is not, this is just the expense side of things.
This is just the expense, that's
So it doesn't show the title component to that. So you can see that there's under the under budget items, we're adding back in that math position, because we're gonna take it out on the bottom under decreases, but because it's in the budget, we have to add that back in. It's in this year's operating budget. The driver ed increase is there. Salary increases, which were just
Right,
misrepresented lines, I guess you would say.
yes.
Some of that could be some of that summer stuff potentially, but it's basically inaccurate salary lines. And then the internet expense, which I explained just wasn't in there correctly because of the revenue. So there's $98,000 of the 240, you could argue, is under budget. Now, some of that's gonna get reduced out, as you see in a moment. The increases in FY18 are gonna total 522, and then when you add the total ones, the under budgeted ones, you get 620. And these are all things that we've gone over, I think, as I've gone through the line items. So the big ones are obviously instructional coach, assistant principal, a small tweak to the PE line, and then some other stuff, I won't say nickel and dime, but some other stuff that kind of comes along as well, plus the sabbatical insurance requests are in there. When you total those two, you get 620, and then you have the decreases, which Lori mentioned, the special ed reductions that are in there, as well as that math and admin assistant position, the English not replacing the person who's departing, and then some retired debt service. So the total increase, that's where the 240 comes from. Questions, thoughts?
Yeah, comments, questions, thoughts?
I know it's a lot. I was asked to provide as detailed as a description of each part of the budget, so that you guys would really have a full understanding of what's in it as far as FTEs, as well as why there might be an increase. To try to explain it. I hope that I've covered everything. You might not like the answers, but at least you'll understand what it is.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job laying it all out. I mean, all the information is there for us.
Lori's
you know.
the Mrs. Clean over here. She's been scrubbing this thing, so I give her all the
It
credit
looks
on this.
great. I was really impressed with the changes. I like it.
Patty, you had a question?
Where would things that we deal with for legal come from? Is that
From the school board
WCSU?
level, you're gonna see that in,
But not, if something's going on with the school itself.
yep, that was gonna be in that, well, this year, it's in the purchase professional services line.
Okay.
For us in here, it's in the general contracted services, line 52.
Okay.
Do we wanna talk about revenues a little bit?
Anybody got any more
Or do you have
questions,
any more
or should we talk about revenues? Okay, yeah.
Well, as you know, revenues change even after town meeting. So, I'm pulling together as much information as I can right now to give you the most accurate picture of where you are as far as this budget is concerned. Tuition, is down a little bit. Those numbers I'm still pulling in, find out how many kids might be coming from Athens, Grafton, that type of thing. But again, it's early to be projecting those numbers. You can see the 168 is in there for the sub-grant for the Title I. It's called the CFP grant, actually, because we're a school-wide school. And a little reduction in Medicaid. That number's pretty good, pretty set right now. Basically, it's just who we're billing on at this point in time. And students come and go. So, I'm not sure if you're familiar with how Medicaid works or if you want to know that, but if you ever do, I can explain that to you. So that's basically majority of the revenues. You can see obviously that the special ed revenues are not in there because they're all on Wyndham Central side. So your revenues are also down because of that. And so then you have your ed spending. That's a calculation based on expenses minus the eligible revenues. Gives you your ed spending number, and that is divided by the threshold. Or, I'm sorry, that is divided by the equalized pupil. And the equalized pupil number that I used right now is the only one I know, which was last year's, which was 296.53. So currently, based on this budget, you are over the threshold of 17,368. That is the threshold that's been announced for this year. Originally, it came in at 17,900, which I was hoping would hold, but Brad James sent the letter that said that 17,368. So you are currently over the threshold with these numbers here by about $1,000 a student, a little less than that, 900 and something.
You
So,
can explain what happens to, make sure you explain what happens when we go over the threshold.
so when you, yes, when you go over the threshold, you know, you're basically double taxed with the overage amount. So your tax rate goes up significantly. There are some exclusions that can help bring you down to the cap. So I'm researching those at this point now. I do know that one of the exclusions is if you have special ed students over the 50,000, that 10%, that you get paid on 90% of it, and that 10% is an exclusion that can come off of that. Debt service can also come off of it, so I'm looking into those exclusions at this point. We have not had one version yet of equalized pupil, so I'm not sure where that stands, whether that's going to go up or down.
Not gonna go up.
Well, we sent in, what was the census data I told you, 311? 311, so there's a potential when they do the 2-year average that it does go up a little bit.
But we're staying level with last year.
Right.
For now, until we get those numbers.
And those numbers come out preliminarily.
Hopefully
as early as the end of
Friday,
this week.
it could be
Maybe.
Monday,
They have to be set by the 15th.
and we have to have an opportunity to review and then challenge or disagree.
So the yield has also been set at $10,072, which is up from last year. So basically, if you were to take the 17,368 and divide it by the yield, you'd have a $1.73 tax rate. That's how that all works out.
And that's up from last year.
It is, it was, I have it in my bag.
955?
No, it was a little higher than that, 9.8 something.
Okay.
So it's up significantly.
They didn't expect it to go up as much as it did, but that's the tax commissioner.
But also remember that
Those numbers can change.
those numbers changed last year in May.
Right. Comments, anyone?
Ouch.
Is that really $300,000? Did I hear that right?
Yep.
And that $300,000 is projecting a $223,000 reduction in special ed costs in 1 year. If our special ed costs don't actually drop by $200,000, it's $500,000.
So what we need to,
Yeah, I was gonna say, so, you know, at this point, we need to decide what we need to decide how we wanna handle this. You know, do we move ahead with overspending the threshold? Do we, these guys obviously will be looking for some direction from us about how to handle this situation.
So I would just say that, our goal tonight is to find out from the 6 of you, what is it you're looking for between tonight and when we come back together on the 13th? It's my understanding that the timeline that we currently have, that you guys would be looking, hopefully, to get something on the 13th that you could consider and vote. And if not, then make a determination whether you need more time. But the 3 of us need to have some guidelines from you about where you want us to go. Our goal was to give you the transparent truth for creating a program here at Leland and Gray that goes with the direction that the board has given us. And now we need some further direction about what you want us to do in the next week.
Go ahead.
So, first of all, I'd like to say thank you, because, there's a lot of cleanup in here, and that required a lot of work. And I know some of this is hard to understand and hard to follow, but I think once we've got this straightened out, and certainly going into next year, this is gonna be a simpler process. I really believe that, and I really am grateful to see this straightened, that things are getting aligned where they need to be. And so I wanna say that first. Then I wanna also say that, we knew our enrollment has been going down for years, and this projection was here for the enrollment to decline, and we're looking at, we didn't talk about this yet, but we're still looking at a decline in enrollment coming up. And yet, this board has said that they deeply value, the fact that we've been able to maintain the programs, essentially, that we have in place to be able to provide what our students need and still be competitive with neighboring schools, so that our programs are attracting students and tuition students especially. But we also have to be aware that we need to be attracting our own member students as well today, because other people are looking at our other schools are looking at our member students as well. So that's been a commitment that I think, I believe that our board has made. But I think we've also made a commitment over the years to stay under the threshold. And I'm gonna have a really hard time probably going to Newfane taxpayers and explain why we're over the threshold. And this is not gonna be easy. And this is not something that I take lightly when I say that. I know how challenging this is going to be for us and for you if you do what I'm going to say. I hope you'll do. And this is just my perspective, not a board perspective. And I'll just say that what I would like before the next meeting is to have you dig back into this in whatever way you possibly think you can, and try to find a way to get us under the threshold. And it's not easy to say that, because I know it's gonna take some significant reductions. But I don't feel qualified to make recommendations around those reductions. I asked questions tonight about things that were important to me, and I feel pretty clear on most of this. And I also think that, I'm being clear with you that if we can maintain our programming, that's what I'd like to do. I also know that may not work with the numbers we're looking at here. So I even recognize that. But you all have significant experience doing the work you're doing here, and I trust you to be able to come back to us with a budget that's under the threshold. And hopefully we'll get some good numbers to take the sting out of this. But this is gonna hurt. And what I don't want to do is hurt our students in any way we possibly can. But I still think, I'm going to go out there and say, I think we need to get under the threshold. That's just me.
I would say that, we're being transparent, that there's 300, there's not a way to not impact kids
Yeah.
at that level of reduction. That would actually be a smaller budget than we have currently. That doesn't include the stuff that was adopted after the budget was adopted. So there's no way to do that without impacting kids, staff, programming. It's not possible. It's just too big of a number. That being said, that's the direction, if that's the direction the board directs me to go. No, I'm saying, if that's the direction to go, then I will come back to you with something. But I can't say, honestly, that's not gonna have an impact.
So I don't want you to think that I was telling you that it needed to not have an impact.
No, I know. I
Because I
just
get
wanna-
that.
I wanna
But I
make sure-
also know that, that some impacts can be mitigated
Sure.
through other avenues. And
Yeah.
that's what I guess I'm suggesting, that I'm telling you what my priorities are, and I know this is gonna be nearly impossible to do. And that's why I trust you to
Thanks.
do it, and why, I'm sorry, but that's why I trust you to do it, and not, I would not want to go in here and say, say, this is an area where you should cut, or that's an area you should cut. And the reason I say that is because it seems very clear to me that you have done incredible work developing this budget, and I could never do that. I could never go in and say, this is more important than that. I think you've already done that, and I trust that you'll find the right area to do it. And you know, we have to find a way to explain that. And what I'd like to see us do is look down the road and say, what are we going to do as we're moving forward under this sort of new reality that we're in? Because we need to be able to still have strong programming here for our kids.
Yeah, and when you look at this,
Right.
I mean, Bill and I have already talked about this today a little bit. When you can't approach it in what next year looks like. You have to be thinking about what the next 3 to 5 years look like, and how next year is phase one of that. Because we've been in the low 300s for a while, right? But that's and we may stay that way for another year, but it's gonna drop off a cliff pretty quickly. And there's just some big classes, the 10th through 12th grade, and they're not being replaced with big classes. And there's really nothing more to it than that, but there is a reality to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't a blip.
And this train has
Right.
been on its way. I mean, we've all, as board members, seen this happening and realized that without some kind of creative thinking that I have no idea what it even looks like, it's gonna impact kids because programs are gonna have to change. It's where we're at.
Well, and I mean, and part of the challenge of coming here is, and I think why you guys brought me in to some extent is to do that creative thinking. A week isn't a ton of time to do that, just so we're clear. I'm gonna do the best I can, and I can, whatever time you guys can give me. I understand you're up against the budget of printing this and getting an annual report put together and so on and so forth that we're obligated to do, and I understand that's important. And I've done, there's been a lot of thinking and work to go into developing this with a lot of thought around what the next 3 to 5 years look like, not knowing that this wasn't gonna be tenable at the time, because we didn't know a lot of those numbers. So this is sort of a major readjust, halftime adjustment, if you will, with very little time to do that. And I'm not trying to, make any excuses or temper that, but that is a reality of that. I don't know how thorough of a 3 to 5 year I can give you in a week. I will do my damnedest for sure. But the type of creative thinking that we're really talking about is probably not gonna happen in the next week. I wanna be honest with you guys about that. I'm gonna address it with my staff immediately. We'll talk tomorrow. And we'll start having some discussions, talk about it, but it can be an incredibly daunting thing, an incredibly fearful thing, and I'm sure the staff are gonna be stressed by this. One of the things that it also can be is a great opportunity for us to think about what we do and how we do it, and how we can do it differently. And, less expensively as well, but the key is differently. And how that different approach can set us apart from other high schools in the state, and, continue to get us to be a targeted place of people who wanna come here. I mean, that's really the challenge. So it's dual fold, but we're viewing it, I think, as an opportunity to do some incredible creative work.
Yeah, I think you'll see that this next week will be kind of setting the stage, but it won't be laying the foundation for the next 5 years, because we need to do some deep thinking about restructuring, reimagining how we approach things. This is real, and it's an opportunity to re-look at things. You have 3 people that are looking at things from new perspectives. This gives us an opportunity to look at things in a new way. I think what I want to emphasize is that, yes, Bob and Lori have done an incredible amount of work just to get us to this point. And it's going to be a big leap in the next week. But the deep work that's going to affect kids for generations is going to be the next 3 to 5 years. And so we're going to really need a partnership with you guys on laying out a vision and the values and the core philosophy about what we're going to lay our chips down on, what we're going to invest in. And we're up for that work. That's why we got into this work. And we're excited about it. But, we have to be realistic as we get there.
Well, you know, and it might mean that at some point we are getting together with the board and the admin to kind of talk through some of those vision things. You know, sometime later in the year, once the budget's approved and we can move forward and have some time, the summer or whatever, to kind of think about what are those big idea vision things that you have, and then, you know, we can talk about implementation and how I can bring those things to fruition. Because it's important work.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned generational differences for families and for kids in this area, and certainly with the Act 46 stuff that's going on, we need to be way ahead of the curve of making those changes. So we accept the challenge if that's what the board's asking us to do, but I know that was just one person. So
Right. Drew, I know you've been waiting, and then Patty.
Not to make the situation worse, where does the stewardship program fit into your budget?
well, there's nothing in the budget that contributes any money to a capital fund. I'm just gonna update you guys next Tuesday on where we are and then our approach on the engineering study and the heating system and all that. And we're moving along on that. I don't think it's realistic to have something ready for you guys or for the voters anytime soon. I think that's probably gonna be a full spring exploration, maybe even into the summer, and try to have something prepared for you guys in the fall that people can discuss, and if there's gonna be discussion around a bond or something like that to do that work, that would be next year.
But do it very thoroughly.
Right, but do a thorough job and really work that out. So we've already met with Efficiency Vermont. We're setting up an engineering visit to come in and sort of walk through and do some of those initial ideas. And it's not just about the heating system, it's about all efficiency. You know, it's electricity, we were trying to match actual costs. Well, maybe I know there is, not just maybe, I know there is efficiencies around how we do lighting in the building that could save us money with LED lights and things like that. So we're gonna look at all the avenues through that study. And the initial parts of that are fully funded by Efficiency Vermont. So it's not a dime that has to go out in the early stages of that. There may be a time at which we have to outlay some cash to help. We would share the cost with Efficiency Vermont on the actual engineering study, and that will 20, maybe 30 grand tops. But what we get from that will be a plan for implementation on how to move forward, and possible rebates and things that will come down the line to us based on whatever savings we realize afterwards. Now, I'll give you guys more information on Tuesday. But yes, there's nothing in the capital, there's no contribution to the capital fund in this
I don't
law.
wanna jump in front
I
of
was
Patty,
gonna
but I
say,
wanna
do you
say
follow up
something
on
related
that?
to that, just
Okay.
related to.
Yeah.
Are you done with? What I wanted to say was that I still am hoping that we're going to be able to have a conversation up in the legislature around construction aid again. And I think the
If
only
only we knew
traction.
someone that was there.
And I'm pretty focused on it, and as are others, but I will tell you that it's gonna be really hard, because there's no money there any more than there is here, but on the other hand, if it can be tied to merged systems, we may be able to find a path forward, and I intend to work on that legislation this year and work with the appropriations on that, because if there's a way we can get some construction aid to help us with that, because we haven't had construction aid in years now. And I think it's a conversation that may happen around that, and that might help offset if we can get that money.
Yeah. Go ahead, Betty.
I agree with Emily up to the point of expecting that whatever you come back with would be what we'd go with. And I'm not sure if that's kind of what you said or not, but I'd like to see what programs would be cut, what changes would be made, with the understanding that we do have to think of our member towns, and having gone through the whole Jamaica wanting to leave thing, that's still something to think about, and it was a scare. And so we really have to be able to offer programs that all of those people want and compete. And we have kept our budgets really low, like really low. We gave, instruction 0% increase one year, I think, and 1%, so I mean, but I would like to have the information about what getting to the getting under the threshold would mean.
Oh, yeah.
So that I would have that
Yeah.
information to say, okay,
Yep.
you know, you've left this in our hands.
And that may necessitate, and I'll leave it up to you guys to decide, but that may necessitate having an additional meeting. And the reason I say that is if whatever that magic number would be, we're not gonna know for sure until the number is firm. It's not technically firm until the 15th, which is 2 days after you guys meet next week. Now, we'll have a preliminary number, which we can base it on, but we may not have that till Friday. And I know, I don't want to mention any names, Kelly, like to have stuff in advance. It's safe to say that the turnaround on this one's gonna be way too tight to get you something in advance, just so and I'll do an explanation and walk you through. I wasn't mentioning it.
Listen to that, we actually have that on
You have a free
film.
pass.
Maybe
Yeah.
Monday?
We'll see. But yes, obviously, you guys need to be on board with what that is. You're the ones that have to help sell this in your communities.
Right.
And, you know, I'm so hopeful with the Act 46, if that goes through and we can find creative ways to utilize that, to utilize all of our staff in much more creative ways. And I'm assuming that a lot of the staff, the faculty is working on trying to be dual certified for things so that they can cover, you know, more than one program and things like that, so, but we won't know about the Act 46 till town meeting day, so.
Anybody else want to voice an opinion? Go ahead.
So you said the equalized pupil right now is 296, enrollment's 311. Looking back, we were at 362. Is there a possibility that's gonna go up?
You know, this is my first time around with this, but they use a 2-year average, so in my mind, I know that we reported, or Leland and Gray reported 311. There was some tuition students that I reported on behalf of Leland and Gray. So that number is higher than 296. So I'd like to see it come in somewhere around 303, 305, but
But the 296 is a function of an average as well, right?
it is a
Yes,
function
it
of an
is.
average.
So what was the actual, do we know the actual?
Census last year?
Yeah.
I don't have that in front of me.
Because it's an average of an average.
It's an average of an average,
It
right?
seems like it could be very positive at this juncture. I'm always very fearful of guessing.
Yeah.
until-
Well, we won't know until we get a preliminary.
But we
number.
should on Friday or Monday at least have the first get-go.
So in terms of timing, do we have any options
What do you mean?
for, I mean, Bob's saying I can only do what I can do by
Well,
Tuesday.
I mean, I was gonna discuss timeline a little bit after everybody got a chance to weigh in on their opinions on sort of where we go with the budget direction, so we had a real board consensus. I mean, it seems like everyone, there's pretty much agreement with what Emily said, you know,
Absolutely.
we need to be
Over the cap
underneath that
or-
threshold. We just don't, you know, that's not something that we
I don't even know how to
can
start
do.
saying
You
that.
know, what, I'm sorry?
I don't even know how to start saying that
Yeah.
Yeah, being over
You know,
the cap is really scary.
Preserve what you
Try
can
to-
preserve, but obviously, you know, you guys, we trust you to make these decisions to, you know, do the best you can for all of our children. And, you know, but in terms of a timeline, I mean, we're supposed to meet again in a week. Hopefully, we have something to approve. Maybe that's not realistic. You know, you're talking about the deep thinking needed. That's probably not realistic to have done before this budget gets approved at all. I mean, it's not like we give you 2 weeks and all of a sudden magic happens, right? So if we meet next week, we look at what you have based on the preliminary numbers and see where we are. If we do have to push out one more meeting, you know, we have the 20th and the 27th. How far, Bill, I need your help on this one.
It's
How far
12/29
can
to
we
1/8.
bump it out?
When do you guys have to?
12/29 to 1/8 is the 30 to 40 days, I just counted.
12/29?
Okay, so 12/29.
12/29 is the.
So
is
we
the-
could meet
in
as
that
late as
window
the
is 30 to 40.
27th. We just need to get sort of confirmation from board members that they could actually meet either on the 27th or the 20th. you know,
Are those
Not
Tuesdays?
during the
those are
day.
Tuesdays. The 27th is a Tuesday that, you know, it's the fourth Tuesday that we sort of keep in reserve for meetings that we may need to have anyway. And it is 2 days after Christmas, but, so if anybody's going away for
Well,
the
not
holidays,
like
we
that
might mess it up, but, you know.
As long as it's not daytime.
No, it would be a Tuesday evening, so
They may be the day too.
you guys,
There's the Jamaica's board meeting on Tuesday, the 20th.
Yeah, I could go to that one. I couldn't be here on the 20th. These two could be here on the 20th.
well, is
You
the
don't
20th or
need
the
me.
27th better for,
Are you guys
you know.
around on the 27th? Are you here?
I'm around both.
Yeah.
I could do whatever.
anybody
I'll be-
preference here for 20th or 27th?
May or may not be here.
I'll make a point of being here at
You
either
know,
one.
I'll
I'd
be
rather
here at
we
either
didn't
one,
have
I'm not
to.
going anywhere. You know, obviously I would be,
Hoping we won't.
I'll be here at either one. So I think we could probably give you a quorum on either the 20th or the 27th. Does it make sense to finalize that date on the 13th? Like, how long are you gonna need?
Yeah,
Is the
I think
20th or the
Well, we don't have
27th
a
better?
quorum guaranteed in this room on the 20th or the 27th, because we're a quorum, and Drew says he may or may not be able to make it. So I think that,
May or may not be able to make it. I
What?
can make it the 20th,
oh, you can make the
not
20th.
necessarily the
So,
27th.
Okay, so we have a
So-
quorum in this room for the 20th.
You have 260.
I mean, that, we have to, I mean,
We have to think about that.
Times 1.1.
I wouldn't suggest, I think we should stick to a date that we know we have a quorum for, that
All
we're
right.
committed to, the six of us, because I don't know what the other board member's gonna be
When
like,
is
and I
our
think
next-
Bob is having a hard
We can
time making it.
confirm
Next
next week.
Well, if we
Let's
have to,
tentatively schedule the 20th, and if we can't, you know, if we have other board
That's
members
what I
next
would
week,
say.
we'll be able to
Can we-
change it.
so we can all guarantee you a quorum on the 20th.
You
So-
can all be there, so then.
Yep.
I
So-
mean, maybe we could do the 21st if we can't do the 20th or something, because we don't have Wednesday's board meetings.
I definitely can't do that.
I got something on the 21st.
Okay.
Isn't there?
I mean, I don't even know if I have something. I don't know.
Well, we don't have an Act 46 meeting yet on the 21st because our last scheduled Act 46 meeting is tomorrow,
Okay.
Actually,
No, I
but
got
we
some-
could be pushing those out, yes?
I misspoke. I cannot do the 20th, that is my board meeting night. So the 20th, I am
Oh,
out.
that's Jamaica's board?
No, rescue.
His-
board
No,
meeting.
his breast.
Oh,
board.
Rescues Board.
The
All
people
right,
that
so, you know, should we
I-
still
I
schedule
understand
for the
that.
20th and then if we need to next week, you can tell us and we can try and push to the 27th? And we'll just have to
Let's
make
try
a
and get
few.
some commitment.
We gotta get.
We'll-
I'm
we'll-
gonna
we
have
will-
to next week.
Somebody
I
has to make
I
phone
will make
calls,
some
too.
phone calls and get us, and emails and get us a quorum for either one of those meetings. You know, if we have to Skype people in, we do.
Yeah. No, we can do that. I just, again, I want to emphasize that what you've asked Bob to do is not going to be possible without reductions to student services or reductions in staff. And so, I know it's
I think
difficult,
that's-
but I think we have to be transparent and honest about what we're all trying to accomplish. It's a difficult task. We'll do our best, but I think we need to be clear that that is on the table. And we'll,
That's clear.
And,
Yeah, I
and I
think
appreciate
I
you
understand.
saying it in that way. It needs to be said.
it's the hard work that we all have to do, you know? And we'll be positive about it, man.
Right, but I also, we know you will. But I also want to say that I really appreciate the discussion and comments, especially by you, Bob, about trying to, or all of you, trying to bring the board into this conversation and looking down the road. I really think that that's a critically important piece to this, because Leland and Gray is vital to our communities. And we need to make sure Leland and Gray is strong and doing what we needed to do. And part of that is bringing all of us together with our best thinking and trying to find a path forward. And I'm pretty encouraged, in fact, by this. And I mean, I know this is really challenging, but I think, you know, sometimes you gotta get down to the core before you really understand what it is that you need to have on the table to move forward. And I welcome the conversation. I really do.
Patty?
Now, when do we involve the public? Don't we, before we vote, usually have,
Tonight, it was the night.
Tonight was the public comment night meeting.
Oh,
This is the
right.
extra meeting we add for the public to come and
This
comment
isn't our
after.
normal meeting.
We've looked at the budget the first time last month.
But they can also come
And they,
Tuesday.
depending
Well,
on
differentiate
what
too.
changes are made to the budget, I would expect we would have some public at our next meeting.
Because I don't want, I mean,
Talking about some of the,
yeah.
This is where they need to be, is at this next one, because after that,
We may be voting at the next one.
yeah, we,
Yeah.
you know,
Voting at the next
unless we disagree strongly with the recommendations, or administration says they need more time to finalize something or make another change or something, I would imagine we would be approving a budget at the next meeting. Barring some
If
major
they
input.
get their numbers from the state early enough to get something done, it's potential.
Yeah,
We could vote on it. We won't
otherwise
have to
we'd
hold
be
it
on the
every-
20th or the 27th.
So everybody out there,
yes.
Right.
Yeah, this will go, they're really fast. This will be live tomorrow night.
Yeah. Drew, you had some, one second, Drew had one comment and then we'll get to you.
So I know we've had a lot of discussion about, we gotta keep it under the threshold, we gotta keep it under the cap, it's really, really important. I guess my comment is, let's not lose focus on kids while we do this.
Yeah.
It's really important that we have a strong educational program here, especially after the discussions we've been having about creating opportunities for kids. So to make your job more difficult, I would like you to preserve the educational opportunities for kids that we have here and the good work that you've already started doing, expanding those programs, while you try to reduce the budget by $300,000.
Well, now that you've been asked to do the impossible.
Even I didn't do that to you.
Yeah, Bob.
So is that, I guess, is that the figure, because I see where the increase here. Could you just tell me what the cap is again, because I heard you say
Threshold
that
is the same thing.
The threshold is 17,368.
That's the
per student.
threshold per student, and we are, did you say 980
Yeah,
per student over that?
correct.
980
Yes.
per student over that. Okay, so that's where the figures, that's what I was trying to figure out. So actually, so even with this increase of 240,000, you're saying you want, the figure you just gave now, Drew, was 300?
If it was just assuming that we've gotta lose $1,000 per student with 300 students, that's the round number.
Okay, yeah, so then,
These three.
But personally, I would rather see us be, if we had to choose between maintaining programming for kids and being slightly above the cap, I'll go back to the town with slightly above the cap, losing educational
We won't
programs.
know that until they come to us with
Right.
a recommendation. We're just giving them a recommendation, we're not voting on a budget.
Well, and I think that's Patty's point about having the detail, so that
Yes.
those things can be discussed.
the backup.
Because that's the powers in those
Yeah,
details.
absolutely.
This is what would happen if we.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want it clear that we're asking you to give us a recommendation based on what we're asking. We're not, I mean, you don't make the decision, we do, so that's all we're saying as a
Right.
board. We're making a recommendation for you, and then we'll decide whether we can live with it.
Right. Anyone else? Go forth and work miracles. All right. There's a meeting tomorrow night for WCSU full board and for Act 46. And then we get to meet again in 1 week, folks. Anyone want to make a motion?
Make a motion, we adjourn. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
We didn't have any.
Do you know-